That's a great way to start this video.
Everyone, welcome to the Snapcast. I'm Rob.
I'm Jerry.
And you'll notice we have two wonderful guests here who like to be children right when we start recording. We're joined by Cash and Carson. And Carson brought his snake today. And there's a... Go ahead.
And his 3 dogs.
And his 3 dogs, yes. You'll see lots of beautiful floofers running around. So the reason we have these two is because this is our first Commander cast. With Commander Masters coming out, we're going to give some tips and insights on how you can upgrade these precons. But first, as always, Jerry, how have you been and what have you been up to?
Man, I've been good. Been playing the One Ring in Modern, doing the ad nauseum thing. Been doing really well with it. I keep hitting that 4-1 barrier in leagues. I'm still trying to push that 5-0.
Nice.
But, and this Saturday is the Invitational, so I'll pass you a link and we'll link it in the description if y'all want to watch that. Want to watch the stream? Various modern decks.
Absolutely. I believe that is twitch.tv/takeactiongames.
Take Action Gaming 574.
There you go. So definitely be sure to check that out every Friday night. They generally have at least one modern FNM. I believe they start around 5 or 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And depending on the turnout, they may even do a secondary stream then later that night. All right. So with this being our first Commander cast episode, we normally don't talk about Commander on this podcast. Jerry, we normally cover like Pioneer, Modern, and Legacy. But
60 card constructed, and sometimes I'll get real ham on limited as well.
Exactly. But now with Commander Masters coming out, it has absolutely drawn my interest. The different decks they have coming out, and then also I've recently started playing Commander again with some buddies of mine back home on Spell Table. Currently, right now for my Commander decks, I would say I have a 5-color Shrines deck with Sisse, the Weatherlight Captain, as my commander for that one. And then I do already have a colorless Eldrazi deck with Kozilek the Great Distortion as my commander for that. What about you, Jerry? What are you doing in the Commander world?
So I took the dive back in to Commander a couple months ago. The first time I played, I had Numot the Devastator, Turbo Land Destruction deck. Nobody liked that. So I was like, okay, I'll get rid of that. And then I found Shroom the Hegemon when that was released back in, I think it was 2009. And I played that deck for years until everyone got sick of it. And then it turned into Brea, and then everyone got sick of it. And then I fell out of Commander, just went into Constructed.
Yeah.
Since then, I've built Orvar, the All-Form CEDH. That's a turbo combo. Use really bad spells to turn your cards into copies of themselves. I play Gyruda Clone Tribal, where you try to play a mirror box effect and try to mill everyone at the table while you get Krakens over and over and over again. And then I play Elishnorn, Mother of Machines, Dungeon Blink, which is a super slow deck, but super fun. You get to play the various Venture into the Dungeon cards, Initiative cards, and then if someone tries to sweep you, you just blow them out with a like Lazelle's Acrobatics, and then Venture into the Dungeon 20 times.
Nice. Now, some of y'all may be wondering why I have Cash and Carson on here. These two, I would say, are the absolute best. I'll stroke y'all's egos. Best Commander players that I have seen in Southeast Georgia. When I started building my 5-color Shrines deck, these were the 2 players that I went to. Carson, you helped me out a lot with getting this set up because you could tell I had that like 60-card mindset going. And when it comes to Commander, there is so much out there that you can do. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit with this. The upgrades we're going to be talking about with these decks aren't going to be like breaking the bank. There are going to be some cards that we will mention that are more expensive, but we're going to cover what I feel are some key aspects of these precons that you would want to upgrade before you go and play in your next pod. But Carson, why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit and tell us about yourself. How long have you been playing Commander, and like what's your main play style, I guess, in Commander?
So I've been playing Magic since 7th edition. Commander, as soon as the first precons ended up coming out, back when they had 3 face commanders in each one. I believe that was back in 2009, 2010 timeframe.
Right around 2010.
Yep, thank you for that. That's when I started getting into Commander, and it has been a love ever since. I've been back and forth between God knows how many decks. Right now, I'm in the process of trying to be part of the Big 32, which is where you have a commander deck for each color combination available in Magic.
Oh wow. How many
Yeah,
of those
sweet.
big 32 do you have?
I have 26.
Jeez.
What are you missing?
Uh, hold on, let me bring up my Mox field and I'll tell you.
I guess hold on. Let me narrow it down. Are you missing 5 color, or are you missing?
Oh no, I've got 5 color.
Okay, you got 5 color.
It's a color. It is a couple of 2 color and 3 color combinations that I'm
Okay.
missing.
Okay. Nice.
So you got over the hump of the 5 color menagerie of money. So
Believe it or
Alright.
not, the 5 color was easier to do than it was the colorless. So if you can get colorless down, believe you me, you can build just about any deck in Commander.
Yeah, colorless. I was fortunate to already have most of the cards for that, so the investment I had to put into it wasn't a whole lot. And there's still more I can do. Like I don't have Mana Vault, Mana Crypt, or any of those other like really I would say higher tier like I guess if you want to talk about power levels like they brought out in what was that 2019 2020, there's the whole power level talk of like level 10, level 9, level 8 decks and all that stuff. I could still do that with this deck. I can optimize it a little bit better with my mana rocks and also with my creatures, but I really like where it's at now with my play group. All right, Cash, what about you? Tell us about yourself.
I have been playing Magic collectively since around original Kamigawa, original Meriden. I started playing Standard in Lorwyn Shadowmoor Standard. What a time to be a Standard player when you're playing against fairies every night. Yay. Um, Started playing Commander in about 2009, 2010, before they released the Commander products and everybody was calling it Elder Dragon Highlander, which was the original name. Currently, I am playing a couple different decks. My main deck right now is the Get Rock Monster Dredge. Yes, it is expensive. Yes, it is complicated to learn, but once you learn it, it's like riding a bike.
Yeah.
The other decks I currently have right now, I have a Yuriko Ninjas deck. I also am actively playing a Tayum Luminous Enigma Reanimator deck. I recently came across Samwise Gamgee, Golem Patient Plotter, Protean Hulk Loops. It's kind of interesting. I need to put that in there. I need to practice that one too. It's currently Revelark and Friends is how it wins, so that's kind of fun.
Okay.
Other than that, I mostly just stick to like um, Johnny decks. I'm a bit of a spike sometimes, if you know the terms. A bit of a
Yep.
tournament grinder. Um,
Huge
that's
Timmy.
yeah, an active huge Timmy. I think I identify more as a Johnny for a combo player. I like weird stuff. Like I like
Nice.
really weird decks that play out strangely just because it's interesting to me.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things I really do enjoy about Commander is that there's a whole bunch of different ways you can play. And finding the right pod and that play group, though, is going to be key because you may not be invited back to that pod. You don't want to go to a casual pod and bust out your CEDH deck. Or, like, if you're going to play something really just, I would say, absolutely hateful, like you're playing a lot of Blood Moon Effects, Contamination, and that, then possibly give them a heads up. Or, depending on the pod, like if you can read the room, slide those cards out, put a couple different like replacement cards in. So that
That's
way
why.
they're
Go ahead.
go,
I'm sorry.
so that way they're like everybody has fun because when it comes to Commander, the way I always viewed it and what initially turned me off is I saw Commander as a casual format. You are sitting around with friends and just enjoying a game of Magic. And that I would say companionship is, in my opinion, the priority. And then playing Magic is kind of like a secondary thing, like, oh hey, we get to play Magic while we hang out. And the one pod I got into at a local store in this area, um, they did not either appropriately read that I was a new person to Commander or did not care. And I got absolutely wrecked. And then there's like the offhanded chastising too. And a new person coming into your pod, like you really need to be careful about those jokes because you don't know how they're going to take it, right? Will they understand that you're being sarcastic or that you're just joking, or will they take it personally? And I took it personally and I said, screw it, I don't want to play this because that was my first true interaction with Commander and it was terrible. And now that I've played a lot of Magic, main constructed over the years, and I've played a little bit of Commander with a few other friends, you start to figure that aspect, I would say, of the actual game out.
Yeah, you'll learn about that real quickly when it comes to certain play groups and certain individuals, and you'll remember those individuals and you'll remember that experience, which is also one of the reasons that I have several other decks built. So I have two decks that are less than $100, and I usually play those with new people. It's like, hey, I want to play test this. I'm new to this. Okay, well, I have this $100 Maelstrom Wanderer Cascade deck where literally all it does is Cascade, Cascade. That's all it does. Does it win? Sometimes. Is it fun? Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really the big thing I would say is as we go through these videos and we do more Commander Series stuff, always just keep in mind the goal of Commander is to have fun. Now, if you want to go out and be a big group hug player, go ahead and do that where you don't care about your own game, but you're just helping everybody else out. Have fun with that because that's always a nice little bit of chaos.
Do understand, group hug has its own win cons.
Group hug is scary sometimes because you don't know how they're going to win. They're like, I'm going to ram everybody. Well, how do you win? Surprise.
Yeah.
This is how it's.
I remember playing against a Feldegriff group hug deck where everyone was so, they weren't caring about him because, again, like you said, group hug will help everybody out at the table. Who wants to bite the hand that feeds them, right? Until we realize that no one has touched him yet. He's still at 40 life points. And then, oh, hey, Felidar Guardian at instant speed at someone else's end step. By the way, I win.
Nice.
Or play Feldegriff and go Divine Intervention.
All right.
Helix Pinnacle, 100 mana. All right, we're done.
Pretty much.
Helix Pinnacle is a sleeper card. The only problem with Helix Pinnacle is it happens on upkeep is when you win. So why not just play Darkstone Reactor? It happens as soon as you get 20 counters on it.
All right, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be covering two of the decks that are releasing here in next week, or 2 weeks or next week?
4th, I think, is when the set comes out.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. All right, so the decks we're going to cover this week are going to be Sliver Swarm and Planeswalker Party. And then next week, we're going to be covering the Eldrazi Unbound and Enduring Enchantments. And the big thing we're going to be talking about, like I said, with these is just highlighting a couple of the new cards, but also talk about how we would upgrade it. And I think you're going to hear a lot of echoes from each deck on what we would focus on, and then kind of give some tips in that. And then for those that are listening, if you would like to join us in our listening booth next week, then you'll be able to ask questions to us live during this. And at the end of each deck, then we'll pick a couple questions to answer for y'all. But let's go ahead and get started. And Carson, you took the Sliver deck. What is it about the Sliver deck you wanted, other than the fact that you currently have a snake wrapped around your arm?
So, little introductions, right? This is Monty. Yes, I understand it's a pun. Monty Python, we got it.
Nice.
But Sliver tribal decks as a whole, I love them. Right, I've got a 5-color dragon deck that I absolutely wreck tables with in both casual and semi-competitive natures. So it was real easy, and I play a creature combo playstyle anyways. Right, so this was definitely inside my wheelhouse. Slivers are known to be the tribal tribe. Every sliver is every sliver's a lord, right? If you're not familiar with what I mean by lord, something that applies a benefit to it, aka Siphon Sliver gives all of your slivers lifelink. Sliver Legion ends up giving all slivers +1/+1 for each other sliver you have, right? Just so on and so forth. Right, and they just keep stockpiling and snowballing on one another. It just becomes a huge nuisance to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when slivers came back to core sets in M14. That was the big thing for draft and limited. There is if you can get a pseudo sliver deck going, do it because you're going to do well.
There was also a lot of hate on those because they looked more humanoid and less sliver.
Yep.
They fixed that though. A lot of these, it looks good now. They look like old meat hooks.
It only took them a couple of years.
All right.
I feel like it's a decade.
So
And another thing to pay attention to with some of the newer slivers is they specify sliver creatures you control. Older slivers doesn't have that, so it affected not only the slivers on your side of the board, but also your opponent's side of the board too. So if you had the tribal mirror match, it was kind of whoever popped off first.
gotcha.
Those are fun to watch though.
Now you can kind of avoid that by playing certain other slivers, but understand their mana costs are a little bit higher.
Yep. All right, so the first one we're going to talk about is Sliver Grave Mother.
All right. While she might not be my first choice for the Sliver Commander, she is the face card for Sliver Swarm. She casts for 1 white, 1 blue, 1 black, 1 red, and 1 green, also commonly called Wooburg. She is a 6/6 legendary sliver that makes it so the legendary rule doesn't apply to sliver creatures you control. That's going to apply to 6 different slivers, of which will be herself, Sliver Queen, Sliver Overlord, First Sliver, Sliver Legion, and Sliver Hive Lord. She also makes it so that each sliver creature card in your graveyard has Encore X, where X is its mana value. If you're not familiar with the Encore ability, you pay the activated ability, you exile the card from your graveyard, and for each opponent, you create a token copy that attacks that opponent this turn if able. The token gains haste, and you do have to sacrifice it at the end step. And you can only activate Encore as a sorcery. That being said, like I said before, this isn't my first choice for a Sliver Commander. I would personally choose either Overlord or Queen just for the combo capabilities. But she, in her own right, with a couple of added cards, does have the ability to go infinite by herself.
Nice. Okay. Now with Overlord and Queen though, I know Sliver Queen that's drastically up there in price, right?
Yes,
You're talking
yes.
200 some odd dollars for that. It's on the reserve list.
Last,
Stronghold printing.
last I checked, her price was actually 350 and rising.
Oh my goodness. Yep,
Thank
that's
The EDH deck doing it for you. It's rising the price.
yeah, and for everybody out there, you're going to see that with a lot of cards. Okay, just real quick, like Eye of Ugin has nearly tripled in value, going from like $13 to almost 40, if not just over $40. So whenever these commander sets do come out, they do have an impact on other cards, and there are probably other, like cheaper cards that were possibly maybe $1 or $2 that have quadrupled or more in price because of a commander set coming out. So be careful what you throw away.
Yeah.
All right. What do you want to talk about next?
The next sliver I want to talk about is Capricious Sliver. This is another new sliver that came out inside the deck. Red has been in a real good habit lately of giving you some of that temporary card draw, so to speak. So this sliver casts for 3 colorless and a red. It's 3/3 and gives all of your slivers, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. Just giving you some extra added card draw real fast when you might need it, right? Gives you, in my opinion, that's really good.
Yeah. No, that's outstanding too, because we'll discuss later, but we have the ability to generate a lot of mana with this deck. So you'll be able to do that. And also too, we'll just talk about it when we get there. All right, next one.
All right. Next, we have the Hatchery Sliver, which is 1 and a green for a 2/2 sliver with Replicate, 1 and a green. If you're not familiar with Replicate, when you cast the spell, you copy it for each time you paid its Replicate cost. So it is an additional cost upon casting. But the neat little thing about this little guy is that each sliver spell you cast has Replicate equal to the casting cost of the actual card. So cards like Gale Rider Sliver, which costs 1 blue, has Replicate for 1 blue. And you can, for 5 blue, you can have 5 copies of Gale Rider Sliver.
Nice.
Next one would be Lazotep Sliver. Lazotep Sliver's 3 and a black for a 4/4 zombie sliver. Sliver creatures you control have Afflict 2, meaning that whenever it becomes blocked, the defending player loses 2 life. Also, whenever a non-token sliver you control dies, you amass slivers 2. You'd be if you played during the Hour of Devastation block, you'd remember that a mass ends up putting two +1/+1 counters on an army you control. In this particular case, it's also a sliver. And if you don't control an army, you create a 0/0 black sliver army creature token first.
Quick
Nice.
aside, a rules guy here. With the way armies work and a mass works, is that you only have one. So yes, you can have an orc zombie sliver army token. This is a thing you can have.
That's good to know
And
because I didn't know that.
yep, on top of that, replicate. This is a little bit more out there, but a little bit higher in your CEDH tables. If someone's playing something like like the ability to kind of counterspell you out of the game, with triggered abilities such as like your counterbalances or your Chalice of the Voids. Replicate doesn't trigger those. It is a trigger that goes on the stack, which does not trigger because you are not casting the copy. You are putting copies on the stack. So this gets around counter magic.
I will
Ooh.
say though, for my fellow counter players, Whirlwind Denial will still try to counter them.
Yes, Whirlwind Denial will do it, but lots of other ways around it.
Mind break
Excellent.
trap.
The next sliver we want to talk about is Regal Sliver. While I don't think it's the best sliver out there, or anywhere's close to one of the best, she casts for 3 and a white. She's a 3/3 sliver, and she gives all slivers you control have whenever this creature enters the battlefield, slivers you control get +1/+1 until the end of the turn. If you're the monarch, otherwise you become the monarch.
Wait, you think this is bad? What?
I personally don't like it. I like that it's bringing the monarchy into Commander, but it's if the +1/+1 was static, like just gave if it was the anthem effect plus monarchy, I could see running or I can see it being 4 mana cost. Aside from that, all it's doing is just making sure you keep the monarchy and drawing a spell at the end of your turn when you didn't exactly have the win already. Kind of not exactly that beneficial unless you're setting up for interaction.
I feel like a cloud shift, blink, blink, blink this thing 3 times is gonna kill someone, right? Am I missing something here?
Uh, kinda, because it's only that one singular sliver that gets the +1. So having a board full of slivers, right? Blinking this, right? Sure, it establishes you as the monarch several times, but at the end of the day, if you blink, 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 the one that you're blinking only gets the +1/+1 until end of turn.
Okay, we'll go with that.
All right.
The next one actually isn't a sliver at all. She's the secondary face card of the deck. Rukaramel, biologist. She also casts for Wooburg. She's a 3/3 legendary human wizard. Now, why is she inside this deck? Let's talk about her. When she enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type. Slivers you control and non-token creatures you control are the chosen type in addition to their other creature types. Same is true for creature spells you own or you control and creature cards you own that aren't on the battlefield. Pay 3 tap, create a 1/1 colorless sliver creature token. Now, personally, if I were to play her, I would name dragons because that ends up pulling out a unique synergy with Scion of the Dragon. It allows you to literally pay 2, dig through your library for any sliver you could possibly want because now they're dragons as well. Put it inside the graveyard. Scion of the Dragon becomes a copy of that sliver until end of turn. You go find whichever sliver you need for the time that you're doing right now. So if you're short one of your mana slivers or your hot or haste slivers, right, you can go get that and start your combo. Right. Also, a neat little thing to bring up that last ability, the pay 3 and tap, create a 1/1 colorless sliver creature token. That is also very similar to, again, the very expensive sliver we mentioned earlier, Sliver Queen, where she just pays 2 to create a sliver colorless creature token. With the addition of Intruder Alarm, her ability becomes just as lethal as the Sliver Queens. So she becomes a nice budget option for those who can't spend the 350 and rising for a Sliver Queen. You can have Rukaramel, and she with plus one more card, does the same thing.
Yeah, and one thing to note too for those that are curious, Intruder Alarm, the Stronghold edition, so the original one, is only about $12 right now. So $12 compared to the 300 plus and still rising. And as we've all seen with reserve list cards, generally when they go up in value, very rarely do they come back down from that new elevated value. They might come down a little bit, but you'll see the jump rise in price as it stays there.
The next one we are going to spend very little time on, Taunting Sliver. 3 and a blue, 3/3, gives all of your creatures all of your slivers whenever it enters the battlefield, goad target creature an opponent controls. I'm personally not a fan of the goad mechanic. I think it's bad. Because 90% of the things you want them to attack with, they're going to tap anyways. So then they become unable to attack. I feel it's a useless concept. So we'll just go ahead and move on.
All right.
The next creature is Titan of Littjara. This is a 6/6 for 4 colorless and 2 blue illusion. But when it enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type, and it is that type in addition to its other types. So obviously in this deck, you're going to choose slivers. Whenever he enters the battlefield or attacks, you may draw a card for each other creature you control that shares a creature type with it. If you do, discard a card. So, amass you a board full of slivers, have it enter the battlefield or attack, and you now have a plethora of cards in your hand at the nice little price of just discarding one.
I think it's odd that this card doesn't have Changeling. Is that just me? Like it's even from the same thematic place that had Changelings. I just feel like
Not
that's odd.
I don't think it's odd because the creature type is illusion. If the creature type was shapeshifter and a head changing, that would make more sense.
Ah, okay, got it.
I think this card is outstanding in almost any travel deck you're going to be able to put it in that has blue. But for that reason, I feel like this card may jump in price pretty significantly, at least for a little bit when it first initially comes out and is released.
I'm
Is it
looking
going to die down a little while later? Probably.
I'm looking at the price right now. It's holding about $28.
Yeah, but when it releases and people start jamming it in like dragons, slivers, we just had a blue green elf tribal deck recon released.
Mhm.
You know, it's gonna go in any tribal deck that has blue in it. I mean, tribal shapeshifters, tribal illusions, and it's just gonna be ridiculous sometimes.
Now I assume because this is a creature, this is similar to I think it's called Kindred Dominance, the 5-mana enchantment.
You are thinking Kindred Discovery. Kindred
Kindred Discovery.
Dominance is the 7-mana board wipe.
Gotcha. Okay, that's why I asked. See,
Yeah.
I'm new.
So
I'm new here.
Kindred Discovery for 3 colorless and 2 blue. When ATBs, you name a creature type. Whenever a creature of that type enters the battlefield or attacks, you draw a card.
Okay. So
Right.
would you actually like
I would actually
this replace that, or would they
So-
go side by side, or
side by side, if you're also running possibly a Thassa's Oracle or a way to get rid of them, that way you don't accidentally mill yourself out. I cannot count the amount of times I've accidentally milled myself out inside my Dragon deck because of Kindred Discovery.
okay?
However, I would say that Titan of Littjara, while it's a creature and more easily removed, it does have that extra added benefit of having that word may.
Hmm.
So you're not going to be able to, or you have the opportunity to not mill yourself out with Titan of Littjara, where you don't have that opportunity with Kindred Discovery.
Yep. The reason I ask is that they're both in this precon, so it's like that's a lot of card draw for an aggro deck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so next card we want to talk about is For the Ancestors. To me, it's a dumbed down version of Kindred Summons. For 2 and a green, you choose a creature type, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal any number of the cards chosen type from among them and put the revealed cards in your hand, rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. But this also has flashback for 3 and a green. So being able to do this twice could be extremely beneficial.
Okay.
I don't think it's worth the $28 price tag though.
I don't
All
think it is either. I think you're better off playing Genesis Wave to get a similar effect anyway.
So all of the new cards, if you look at their pricings, they're going to be holding steady somewhere around $28 to $30, with the exception of, say, like Slivergrave Mother and uh, possibly the other commanders. Uh, Primarily because, well, these are specific to this, unless you are pulling the full art cards from, say, collector boosters and things of that nature. Right? These are the only way that you are getting the normal printings of these cards, which is
Gotcha.
why they're holding it 28. And this has been a common thing for as long as I can remember. They've been doing this ever since they started doing specific cards for this or for the decks. The last new card I want to talk about is Descendants Fury. This is going to be every tribal token deck's wet dream if they can play red. For 3 and a red, it's an enchantment. Whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice one of them. If you do, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card that shares a creature type with the sacrificed creature. And you put that card on top of you put that card onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This makes your tokens excessively more valuable than what they already were. They're no longer just cannon fodder. They now become your next sliver. They now become your next goblin. They now become whatever, or your next dragon, for crying out loud. Right? Tribal decks will love this.
Tribal kobolds, they're coming back, baby.
I just want a Togs.
You can do a Togs as well.
There are
Nice.
enough Atogs to be able to play Tribal Atog, but you're kind of shoehorned into playing Atog as the commander.
Yeah. I'm okay with that. My local game store still has one for sale.
Hey, get it.
Now, let's go ahead and talk about our Hive Lords, right? That'll be again, the super expensive Sliver Queen that we mentioned, Overlord, even Morophon the Boundless. Shapeshifter, yes, but has Changeling and is in fact a Sliver. The first Sliver, Sliver Legion, and the Sliver Hive Lord. The Sliver Queen can pretty much go infinite by herself so long as you have the enchantment Mana Echoes out. Right? Mana Echoes for 2 and 2 red. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, you gain colorless mana equal to the amount of creatures that share a creature type with it. So you're just infinitely activating her ability. Not only do you have infinite sliver tokens at this point, but you now also have infinite colorless mana. The Sliver Overlord and his best friend, the Amoeboid Changeling. With enough mana, you can pretty much take whatever you want. In fact, you only need 3 mana. You tap the Amoeboid Changeling, make something have all creature types, it now becomes a Sliver. So you now pay the 3 mana, which is the second ability of Sliver Hive Lord, I believe. Or sorry, Sliver Overlord. And you gain control of whatever you want on the battlefield, so long as it's a creature. Other things to note with Sliver Overlord: if you have one of your mana slivers and a haste sliver with Intruder Alarm, you can literally cast, or sorry, cast every single sliver in your deck.
Yeah.
You go fetch them, you put them into your hand, you cast it, put it on the battlefield, you untap everything, tap everything again, go grab the next sliver, keep going until you've got everything and you're ready to just pummel the board and walk right into a Cyclonic Rift.
Yeah, because
You're literally playing into board wipes right now.
Yep. Because we have a couple of different mana slivers. Up right now we got Mana Weft sliver, but you also have Gemhide sliver. And then when it comes to your haste slivers, I think there are 4 of them, right?
There are 4. There is Blur, Heart, Cloud Shredder, and Firewake. Personally, Cloud Shredder's my favorite because for 2 mana, you're also giving them flying too.
Yes.
Which is kind of busted. Morophon the Boundless. When he enters the battlefield, you name a creature type. He is, or creatures of the chosen type not only get +1/+1, but now cost Wooburg less. Does anyone want to pay attention to what our fucking, or sorry, pardon my language.
You're good.
Does anyone want to take a guess at what all of our Hive Lords cost mana-wise? That's right, it's Wooburg. He just made all of your Hive Lords free. Right? And in case you want to make all of your other slivers free, if you include Joda Archmage Eternal, Fist of Suns on the battlefield with Morophon the Boundless, all of your slivers are free.
That's just filthy.
I like to call it build your own omniscience.
And then we play first sliver and cascade everything into play on one turn.
Exactly. Thank you for bringing up the first sliver. That gives all of your slivers cascade. And
I think the first slivers are really good. Like, it's a very good sliver to have in pretty much any sliver deck out there. But I also feel like it's a really good option if you don't want to spend $350 on a sliver queen.
yeah, last I checked, his price was roughly around $40.
Yeah.
But again, like I said, climbing. That 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 price is only going to increase the further you wait. The last ones to mention, Legion and Hive Lord. There's not many combos that come with these gentlemen. Legion gives, or I believe I poked at it earlier. Sliver Legion gives all slivers you control +1/+1 for each other sliver you control. It is a coat of arms that doesn't hurt you by also benefiting your opponent's side. And the Hive Lord makes them all indestructible. Makes all of your slivers indestructible. Sure, will they still will they still get removed from the battlefield via Path to Exile or Swords to Plowshares? Sure. Then again, so will pretty much everything if it doesn't have Expert or Shroud. Now, as a whole with the deck, things that you need to pay attention to, your key pieces that make the Sliver Grave Mother go burr. You need to have a haste sliver. You need to have your mana slivers, right? There are plenty of sack outlets you can choose from. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of which can also just be actual slivers. But if you include at least one of each, then there is a very convoluted yet still infinite combo that will give you infinite Sliver Grave Mothers.
Ooh, I like that. Because grandmothers feed you food whether or not you're hungry. So please do tell.
All right. So basically, what you do, for this example, we will use Cloud Shredder, Gemhide, and Basal. That will be, or that gives us 1 haste, 1 mana, and 1 sacrifice outlet. You start by having Sliver Grave Mother in the command zone, all other permanents on the battlefield. If I haven't mentioned yet, you do need Intruder Alarm. You need to have at least 3 opponents. So this, if you've knocked one out, it does make this a little bit harder. But at least 3 opponents, and at most 2 mana of any 2 different colors, plus commander tax if applicable. You activate all the slivers you control by tapping them, adding 1 mana of any color for each sliver tapped this way. You cast the Sliver Grave Mother from the command zone by paying Wooburg and the commander tax if applicable. When she enters the battlefield, it will trigger Intruder Alarm. Hold priority, tap Sliver Grave Mother by adding a mana. Resolve the Intruder Alarm, untapping all of your creatures. Activate all of your slivers again by tapping them for more mana. Now you activate the Sliver Grave Mother by sacrificing it to Basal Sliver, adding 2 black mana. Don't return her to the command zone. Leave her inside the graveyard, because you're going to encore her, right? Use the mana to encore her. You now have 3 copies of Sliver Grave Mother. That's going to trigger Intruder Alarm 3 times, allowing you to tap and untap all of your slivers 3 times, adding more mana for you to do the same thing. You're then going to sacrifice the original or sorry, you're good. Blah, blah, blah. Sorry, not sacrifice. Right. One, the Encore ability is going to exile her. You don't want to leave her in exile. You want to bring her back to the command zone. But now you have enough mana to pay for her again. So play her again, activate Intruder Alarm, untap everything, tap everything for mana. Keep doing this over and over and over and over again until you have infinite Sliver Gravemother tokens with haste to just bum rush your opponents.
Ah,
So I got it figured out, and I'll take it way less number of cards with Sliver Grave Mother.
Yeah.
You have Orvar the All Form in your deck because Orvar the All Form is a changeling. So you have your own mirror box for Orvar in the command zone, and then use Whim of Volrath and not care.
Says the guy that's been talking about Orvar the All Form for the last 2 or 3 hours.
I love the card, man. It's my favorite commander deck.
It's a fun deck. It's a good one too.
And it's like I think you can just like if you're gonna upgrade this in a goofy, janky way, stick an Orvar in here and like Whim of Volrath and Glamour Die and just go at it.
That's fair. Also, I want to point out that with the Encore ability, you can actually stop this, right? You can stop that second part, that last part that says you have to sacrifice them at the beginning of the end step. Let's go ahead and bring up Obeka and Sundial of the Infinite.
That's cool.
Right?
Stop.
Obeka, Brute Chronologist, she has the ability to tap, and the player whose turn it is may end the turn. This will exile all spells and abilities from the stack. The players whose turn it is will then discard down to their maximum hand size, damage wears off, and this turn and until end of turn effects ends. So you wait till the delayed trigger of having to sacrifice them is on the stack, tap it, you just end the turn, exiling that sacrifice trigger on the stack. You now have your Encore copies remaining with you forever now until people get rid of them.
Now, I do have a question because Sliver Grave Mother does say at the end of the next end step. So on your opponent's follow-on turn, would you lose those to Encore, or is it because it lasted through like
Because
that end of turn?
Because it lasted through, it already saw an end step, right? So it
Oh,
is no
gotcha.
longer it no longer has that sacrifice trigger on them.
Yep, it's the same interaction as like Glorious End plus Angel's Grace. It
Okay.
only each or a Pact and Angel's Grace. The effect goes on the stack once. Once you beat it, it doesn't just keep recurring.
Okay, gotcha. And then Sundial of the Infinite pretty much does the exact same thing, but instead of being an Ogre Wizard, it's just an artifact that costs 2.
Exactly. Now, let's talk about other ways that you can, support your local hive for a local donation to your local game store, with arms of an angel inside the background. We've got other neat artifacts, some of which actually included in the deck. We have Door of Destinies, which is a great budget value card that'll increase any tribal deck's inherent value. Each time you cast, is it cast or enter the battlefield?
Enter the battlefield.
Thank you. Each time one of the named creature type enters the battlefield, all creatures you control get an extra +1/+1.
Correct. Yeah.
And not until end of turn.
Right, because what you do is you put a charge counter on Door of Destinies, and then creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1 for each charge counter. So if you have a way to proliferate or increase counters on target artifact or anything like that, you can also abuse that to make your Door of Destinies even better for your little sliver friends.
Karn's Bastion.
Yep.
Another great one is Herald's Horn, right? Another tribal benefit card. Makes creatures of the chosen type cost 1 less to cast. And at the beginning of your upkeep, you look at the top card of your library and you may reveal it if it is a card or a creature card of the chosen type. If you do, you put it in your hand. Otherwise, guess what? That's the next card you drew for the turn. Urza's Incubator is great for any tribal deck. I don't care. I will fight this one. I will die on this hill. 3 generic mana. When ETBs, you choose a creature type. Creature spells of the chosen type cost 2 less to cast. Yes. Vanquisher's Banner, 5 mana. Again, we're choosing creature types on ETB. Get a static anthem +1/+1, and whenever you cast a spell of the chosen type, you draw a card. Call to the Kindred. I like free spells. I really do. Right? This one ends up saying that at the beginning of your upkeep, you can look at the top 5 cards of your library. And if you do, you may put a creature card that shares a creature type with the enchanted creature from among them onto the battlefield. And then put the rest on the bottom of the library in a random order. Right? So, free slivers, I'm here for it. Same thing with Descendant's Path. At the beginning of your upkeep, you reveal the top card of your library, and if it just so happens to match one of the creature spell or a creature type that you have on the battlefield, it goes straight, or you cast it without paying its mana cost, which is arguably better than Call to the Kindred because you're getting that cast trigger. Now, sure, it's counterable, but you also get certain other triggers like Replicate from Hatchery Sliver or Cascade from the first Sliver, right? Things of that nature. Reflections of Litjara, right? That name might sound familiar because we now have the Titan of Litjara that came out in this deck. For 4 and a blue, right? When ETBs, you choose a creature type. Whenever you cast a spell of the chosen type, you copy that spell.
Oh my goodness.
What's
really
better
good.
than 1 sliver? 2 slivers, at least not for your opponents. Another card that I forgot to mention on my list is Pirate Heroes. Right, this acts as a birthing pod effect for tribal decks. For 2 colorless, it is an artifact, and you pay 2, tap, and sacrifice a creature. Search your library for a creature card that shares a creature type with a sacrificed creature that has converted mana cost equal to 1 plus that creature's converted mana cost. Put it onto the battlefield, shuffle your library, activate only as a sorcery. Now, not only does this benefit by getting you closer to your Hive Lords, this also fuels the Grave Mother by giving you things to put inside your graveyard so you can encore them later. Other things that I might do is, because this is a tribal deck, every tribal deck suffers the same weakness. 1 board wipe will take you out of the game for an extended period of time. Mass reanimation spells like Living Death or Patriarch's Bidding can help you prevent this.
Another good one that you can also include is Heroic Intervention. It gives them indestructible and hexproof until end of turn for all your permanents for 2.
Yes.
Ghostway, the popular one. Blink them all out for the turn.
That's a good one.
Yep. And I know I had mentioned it when I had said, or when we were talking about For the Ancestors, but Kindred Summons initially came out during Commander 2017 inside the Dragon Precon. For 5 colorless and 2 green, it's an instant. You choose a creature type, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal X cards of the chosen type, where X is the number of creatures you control of that type. They immediately enter the battlefield, and you shuffle all other revealed cards into your library. Right? It's such a Timmy card. Yes, 7 mana is expensive, but
I don't think you're having problems making 7 mana.
exactly.
I thought that was Kindred Discovery. What was that card?
That was Kindred Summons.
Kindred Summons.
5
Okay.
and green.
Yeah, here we go. Okay, there we go.
Apologies for the confusion.
Oh no, it's okay. Yeah, like we've been rapid firing cards, and for those who don't know, I'm just over here just like madly typing away, trying to get them up on the screen for those watching on YouTube.
Trying to Mad Hatter it all. Just,
Right? It's like, I don't know.
But unfortunately, right, no matter how we upgrade this deck, we're going to address the elephant in the room. This mana base that comes inside this precon is absolutely abysmal.
It is atrocious.
This is
I haven't
garbage.
seen a mana base this bad since Precon 5-color dragons from the Dragon days.
Yeah, and I felt that pain too.
Like, even if you're I feel like even if you're trying to stay budget, upgrading this deck, it's still going to hurt your pocket because of how much land you're gonna have to fix.
Well,
Yeah.
like here's the biggest sin of them all. Why is Sliver Hive not in this precon?
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Like, it's a
You would,
$40 card.
yeah.
I'm like,
I
why is this
mean,
not in here?
you would think that
Well, so
I'm not
paying
here's
asking.
premium
I'm not
deck
asking
price, you
Cavern of
get the
Souls.
sliver land.
here's
Like-
here's the great part about that, Jerry. Ask me what the price for Sliver Hive was before they revealed the price for this deck.
Probably dirt.
What was it?
$5.
Yep. And
As
now
he
you're
throws the thing across the room.
looking at $35-$40 for a Sliver Hive.
Now,
so
do
dumb.
understand for all of those foil junkies out there like myself, there
Ugh.
is a secret lair drop high or Sliver Hive that is roughly going for about $110.
That's because it's a foil full art sliver hive.
It is. Right. So if you're a foil junkie and want to spend that type of mana, I'm gonna tell you to save it and go get yourself a Sliver Queen. But
Yes.
Aside from the fact that's the only place you're going to get it extended art and foil.
exactly. Some things we just can't avoid.
This is why we can't have nice things.
Exactly. But things that you can do for budget upgrades for the land base, you've got your shock lands, right? You've got your triomes. You've even got the commander lands, right? Which benefit only multiplayer formats. They come into play tapped unless you have 2 or more opponents,
Yeah,
like
the battle bond lands.
the battle bond lands or the lands that came out of New Capenna, right? Like, or sorry, no, those were triomes. Where did the other 5 come from? Was it the previous?
Ikoria.
Ikoria.
Yeah,
Ikoria
Ikoria
was the first 5, and then New Capenna was the second 5.
for the triomes, and the triomes are an amazing choice. Just understand they will come into play tapped, but they, unlike the commander lands, they are fetchable.
And you
Yes.
can cycle them if you don't need them immediately.
Yep.
Exactly.
And yeah, so for some of those, right, you're probably looking anywhere between the $10 to $20 price range. But I would piecemeal that upgrade. However, it is something that absolutely needs addressed. One thing I did like about some of the latter cards you were talking about, though, is they were on the cheaper side. They were like maybe $5-10, if not less than that. Some of them were less than $1 that you can add into the deck and already make a somewhat of an immediate upgrade and impact.
Yeah. So other than the Sliver Queen and your other Sliver Hive Lords, right? Your Overlord and all them, right? Primarily, each sliver is pennies on the dollar. Um, Spiteful Sliver is up there with at $2.
Yeah.
Siphon Slivers $5, but you'll be hard pressed to find a sliver that aren't one of the legendary 5-color ones that is that is above $7 when I was looking at it.
For all you Sliver haters out there, Plague Sliver is 75 cents on average.
Yeah.
Also, Necrotic Sliver at its cheapest is 19 cents,
Ooh.
and he's one of the sacrifice slivers that I mentioned earlier that can make Sliver Grave Mother go burr.
Oh
Mhm.
yes.
I think another good option for your sliver deck for others that want to like kind of like end the game faster, a good one would be like Triumph of the Hordes to give them a +1/+1 travel and effect. That's another
Yeah.
really good like 1-card win con that you can have in a deck like this once you like get a good decent board state going.
Also, who thought Blasphemous Act was a great card? If you have Spiteful Sliver out, right, all of your slivers have the whenever this creature is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target player or planeswalker. So fill your board with slivers, play Blasphemous Act. Now you've got as many slivers as you got instances of dealing 13 damage.
Repercussions is a thing too. On the
Yeah.
expensive side though.
Yeah, and that Spiteful Sliver and Blasphemous Act combo here is all of about $3.50.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
amazing. That's amazing. It's that cheap.
Yeah.
Just if I had to press it, don't use Taunting Sliver. It's not worth it.
No.
He is an
Yeah.
immediate cut.
Yep. And
Yeah.
I think that's probably going to be the hardest part as people start to upgrade their decks is figuring out what angle do you want to go with it and what is it you're cutting to just optimize the deck to do what you want to do as efficiently as possible.
And that's what everyone that's any deck, not just, updating precons or just just building decks in general. That's the hardest thing that I see that people have. And the longest conversations I have inside my LGS is literally just, hey, how do we help this? How do we refine this? Let's take this brick on a stick that you got and let's sharpen it to a spear point.
Yep.
And generally, you will see that attitude, I would say, with most Commander players. They are a very awesome crowd because they just want to have, the best game possible at the appropriate level. But at the end of the game, you can ask, hey, um, other than bad draws, what can I do to improve my deck? Because obviously, luck of the draw is always going to be there. So trying to get that additional assistance, because some people may already have an idea of what you want to do or help you find a new angle that you didn't know existed with that deck.
Yeah. And not only that, right? Other ways you can upgrade this deck is your typical commander staples. You're in red, uh freaking help me out, the goblin. I'm blanking here.
Dockside Extortionist.
Thank you, that one. Right. Dockside Extortionist, he should be in just about any red deck that you
He's
run.
he's still $50+ too.
I didn't say he was cheap. I just said you should run him.
You're not
Yeah.
wrong.
Smothering Tithe, uh, Ristic Study is another great choice. Other good staples that you
Mystic
find.
Aurora just got reprinted too. That's a really good card in blue decks.
Oh, did you also know that this deck can actually go infinite with ice? Or sorry, not Icercon. Well, Icercon, yes, it can. But Aetherflux Reservoir.
That's funny.
If you add Morophon the Boundless and Aetherflux Reservoir, one Hibernation Sliver gets you infinite with Aetherflux Reservoir.
It's gross. Funny, but it's gross. Just shotgun everybody repeatedly.
I enjoy Aetherflux Reservoir wins, so yes, I support this.
I like Aetherflux. I think Aetherflux Reservoir is probably one of the better cards you're going to see because you're just like, I'm going to Infinite Storm. Okay, well, how do you kill us? Aetherflux Reservoir? Oh, crap. Here we go.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Does anybody have anything else to add for Slivers Unbound before we move on to the next one?
One more card that I want to bring to attention that's really good for budget that could help this deck too for some people is Lifecrafter's Bestiary. It's a pretty decently cheap artifact. It costs like maybe a buck or two. And the beginning of your upkeep, you get the scry one, and when you cast a creature, you can just pay one extra green to draw a card. So if you're low on cards, there's always your option to get more cards back in your hand.
Yep, and you're only looking at about $1.10 for this card too.
It's super cheap. It's really good though.
Yep. All right. Well, before we get on to the next one, always got to give a shout out to our sponsors, the wonderful gentleman down at Deep Dive Games in Georgia, which is actually where you can find both Carson and Cash playing every Friday night, just about, and of course the other occasional random days whenever they have Commander pods. So if you want to up your Commander game and look at the awesome stock, or if you want to explore a new game, you can definitely check out Deep Dive Games in St. Mary's, Georgia, and you can check them out online as well. All right. Cash, you got the next one here.
So the deck that I brought today is Planeswalker Party.
Yes.
I like this deck. This is an interesting deck concept for me. I have not played an actual true like Super Friends deck. This is what we're gonna call this. The last like Super Friends deck I played was a Sisay with a like Captain deck 5 color, and there was only 9 Planeswalkers in it, so it was nowhere near the depth that this deck is going to have. I was very pleasantly surprised with the inclusion of the Chain Veil in this deck, and we're going to talk about that today. It's really cool. Um,
Yes.
so first of all, we're gonna keep Face Commander, Mr. Commodore Guff. For those of you that are unaware of, he's a colorless, a blue, a red, a white. He comes in with 5 loyalty counters on him. And he states at the beginning of your end step, pull a loyalty counter on another target planeswalker you control, +1. Create a 1/1 red wizard creature token with tap, add red, spend it only to cast planeswalker spells. And then -3, draw X cards, and Commodore Guff deals X damage to each opponent where X is the number of planeswalkers you control. So we
Very
grand total
nice.
have 16 planeswalkers in this deck total. So you should be able to do some pretty decent damage with that minus ability. Going
Yeah.
forward, the first card we want to talk about is the new one, Chandra, Legacy of Fire. So 4 and a red, 3 loyalty. At the beginning of your end step, she does X damage to each opponent, X is the number of planeswalkers you control, +1, add 1 red mana for each planeswalker you control, 0, remove a loyalty counter from each of any number of permanents you control, exile that many cards from the top of your library. You may play them this turn.
I like
Uh,
that.
I like this card. I think this card is good in this deck. If you mix this card along with another 1 or 2 planeswalkers, this thing has the potentiality to go infinite in this deck with 2 other key cards that we're going to talk about here in just a few minutes. I believe Jerry wanted to say something about this card in Legacy, I think you said?
Yeah, man. I mean, this card's going to be nuts in Mono Red Prison because alongside Karn the Great Creator with Mycosynth Lattice Lock, you have a very consistent way of getting that going as soon as turn 3. So I expect this card to hold its price of $30 for a long time.
I can expect it to do that as well, too. I
I
said
could almost see it raise in price.
Yeah.
I can agree with you on that one also.
Jerry, for you, what do you see as the big draw for that? We'll steer away real quick here and dive into this a little bit. What is the big draw for this in Legacy?
Well, the big draw is that already the One Ring is seeing play alongside Karn the Great Creator in Mono Red Prison because you can play it so quickly, as well as amassing lock pieces on turn 1. This is just to further that win condition because your ability to make red mana off of her 2 red mana after having 4 lands on the field is precisely the exact amount you need to cast Mycosynth Lattice with Karn on the field. So
Gotcha.
there's no way that deck doesn't introduce Chandra Legacy of Fire as a full 5 of, at least in the current iteration with the One Ring, Karn, Chandra, no Rabble Masters. We're not doing that. Jackal Hops to total lock the opponent out of the game. Like I think that this is where this is going to go in Legacy.
Excellent. All right, back to Commander.
All right, the next card we're going to talk about is Rouse Zarek. Rouse Zarek's mainly in here for his ability to +1 to tap a target permanent and then untap another target permanent. The -2 to do 3 damage to any target is still a really good idea. Just if you need to take care of any problem creatures, he can also double as a win con in the combo. Again, we're going to talk about that soon. As well as his ultimate is just really good. If he gets ignored and you ult, they're going to have a really hard time stopping you for the potential of up to 5 extra turns. Usually you get about 2 or 3 on average though.
Johnny Two Bolt's doing his job.
So what he does, the next card I believe we were going to discuss is Rowan, and I'm going to discuss Rowan, Scholar of Sparks in conjunction with Saheeli, but we're going to start with Rowan. Rowan is 2 and a red. This is the flip one that has Will on the back of it. We don't really care about Will in this deck. We're mainly focused on Rowan. The whole making your instants and sorceries cost 1 less is really good, but what we're really after is that +1. It says that she does 1 damage to each opponent. If you draw 3 or more cards this turn, she does 3 damage to them instead. And then the ultimate says you get an emblem whenever you cast an search spell. You may pay 2. If you do copy the spell, you may choose new targets for the copies. We're not really worried about the minus. We're focusing on the plus. Saheeli, same thing. Saheeli Ray, the original one from Kaladesh, I believe. 1, a red, a blue, starts with 3, +1, scry 1, shoot everybody for 1. -2, make a token that's a copy of another target artifact or creature you control, except it's an artifact in addition to other types. The token gains haste, exile at the beginning of the next end step. Yes, we do run Felidar Guardian in this deck. For those of you who don't know, it does go infinite with Felidar Guardian, and that's another win con in this deck. Moving on to Planeswalkers, we do have 3 different Tefiris in here. We have Master of Time, Temporal Pilgrim, but we're going to focus on Who Slows the Sunset. Mainly because it's +1, choose up to 1 target artifact, up to 1 target creature, and up to 1 target land. Untap the chosen permanents you control, tap the chosen permanents you don't control, and then you gain 2 life. I know a lot of individuals have asked me why I do not run Hero of Dominaria, and the answer is Hero of Dominaria doesn't exactly do what I'm trying to do in this deck right now. Will I add it at a later date? date, yes, it is possible for me to add it later on, but I'm not sure yet. Again, this also is another one of those cards that has the potential to go infinite in conjunction with some other pieces. Tezzeret the Seeker is the next card we're going to talk about. Good old classic 3 double blue, +1, untap 2 artifacts, -X, tutor for an artifact, CMC X or less. Again, we care about the plus, we care about the minus, we do not care about the ultimate. The ultimate's not what we're doing in this deck. Um, and then we're also going to talk about the brand new Mr. Vronos Masked Inquisitor. I like this guy. This card is really cool. 3/2 blue for a 5 loyalty beginning planeswalker. +1, up to 2 other target planeswalkers you control phase out at the beginning of the next end step. -2 for each opponent. Return up to 1 target dominant permanent that player controls to its owner's hand. -7, target artifact you control becomes a 9/9 construct artifact creature and gains vigilance indestructible, and this creature can't be blocked. The ultimate's pretty decent. If you somehow ever get him to alt range, have fun ulting him and making a really big 9/9, but I don't really think that's going to get you very far in Commander. It's mainly the plus and the minus, and the plus is really good because if you get to a point where you have a planeswalker that's about to ult, but you have to wait a turn to do it, you're just like, plus Chronos, phase them out. Because the best part about phasing is when you phase out a planeswalker and they come back, they still have the same number of loyalty counters they had on them when they ceased to exist,
Nice.
which is just ridiculous. It's the same thing with tokens, plus some counters, enchantments. So it works with planeswalker loyalty counters, and it's unbelievably good. The -2 is also really good because typically a lot of walkers have it to where you bounce just one thing. Now, this guy says for each opponent, return up to 1 target non-land permanent that player controls to their hand. So not only are you using one ability to get rid of 2 problems, but you can get rid of up to 3 different problems at one time. And that's really good considering the fact that he costs 5 mana.
Yeah.
Now,
So, to your credit, I like what you've done with your decision making tree on like what planeswalkers to play in an upgraded version of this deck, because a lot of what I've seen from various planeswalker super friends pods that I've just kind of watched someone play is their deck actually just does nothing and they wonder why they lost. Your deck, you're actually trying to kill your opponent. Like
yeah,
Teferi Hero Dominaria, as good as it is at 60 card constructed, it's fine in Commander, but it's not killing your opponent to
no,
where Healy Rye is definitely killing your opponents. Stuff like that matters. Raul Zarek is killing your opponents. These are things that
yes,
we want. Like
To
when you said Teferi Sunset, I'm like, what the hell does this even do? I look at it and I'm like, oh, this actually just actively tries to win you the game.
yes,
So I'm here for your decision tree on this. This is like something I think a lot of people should take with them on like when designing a deck. Like in commander focus, it's great that your deck does all these cool little bells and whistles, but does it actually end the game?
right.
to be fair, while it's not exactly morally approved, having your opponent scoop out of frustration is still a win.
You're right, it is. And that has happened with me playing Get Rock Monsters several times. Is it a really, really cruddy way to win? Yes. But is it a win? It is. Um, no,
So,
Jerry,
so when you end up saying, people with, planeswalker decks that don't run anything, I actually felt that a little bit inside my soul with my 4-color Atraxa Super
yeah,
Friends deck.
that's
It's
because
like,
four
I,
color attracts the Super Friends decks run 35 planeswalkers that don't do anything half the time. And I don't know about you, that
I got it down to 19.
I don't like I don't want to sit here and watch you activate planeswalkers for 45 minutes and not win the game.
Not actually end the
I do.
game.
To win the game.
Oh my god, shut
I'm
up,
here
Rob.
for it. I'm here for it.
No, no,
I'm having fun. The focus of
right?
Commander is having fun. I'm having
Thank
fun.
you. Thank you.
Right.
Yes. I'm here with you.
But back to what you were saying, Jerry, about the decision tree and everything else like that. When I was first introduced into Magic years and years ago, a really good friend of mine preached value, value, value. Get the value out of your cards. Get the abilities that you want that are going to benefit your strategy and value train you to your win. I personally am also a really big preacher of synergies in your deck. If you have one card in the deck and it synergizes with just one thing, just don't even run the card.
It's not worth it. You're not doing
It's
anything.
not, and redundancy is key. Moving on to creatures, I believe the first one we were going to talk about, if my notes are correct, is Baron Master Wizard in conjunction with Dockside Extortionist. Mainly, this is just an infinite. This is an infinite mana combo. That's literally what this is. You just have to remember that you have to create 6 treasures in order for this to work, because you have to have 3 to play to Baron. I believe it is 2 to pay into Baron's ability, 1 permanent sacrifice to Baron, and then 2 to recast Oxide Extortionist. So you have to make 6 every cycle that you cast recast Oxide Extortionist. Now we're going to skate over to Displacer Kitten. I really enjoy this card in a lot more decks than what I probably should. This card is amazing in this deck. It's 4 mana 2/2. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, exile up to 1 target non-land permanent you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. If you got a planeswalker about to die, play a planeswalker, blink the one about to die, reset his counters, activate him again. Or if you just want to get a double activation off of it, play a planeswalker spell or an instant, blink it, activate it again. This is also really cool for being able to cast a planeswalker and blink your Dockside Extortionist, and blinking Deep Glow Skate, which actually comes already in the Precon deck, which I was very pleased with that they did that. Moving on to the next card, I believe we were going to talk about one of the new ones, Jaya's Phoenix. This is an interesting card. 4 and a red for a 3/3 Phoenix with flying and haste. Whenever Jaya's Phoenix deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, copy the next loyalty ability you activate this turn when you activate it. You may choose new targets for the copy. Whenever you cast a planeswalker spell, you may return Jaya's Phoenix from your graveyard to the battlefield. I like this card because it is a constant reoccurring blocker for planeswalkers. So like you can actually play this early on to get some aggressive chip damage in and try to get double activations on key planeswalkers that you need to untap artifacts, ping somebody for damage, kill a creature, make more mana. Um, because you can say, hey, punch you with the Giant's Phoenix, activate Chandra Torture Defiance, make 4 red mana, and then play something else and play another Chandra or something like that.
You know, I will say I was kind of upset by the mana cost at first. 5 mana for 3/3 of flying and haste. But yeah, seeing how you can synergize this into a deck, continuous recurrence, copying the planeswalker abilities, like this is pretty nuts.
Yeah, I really
could
like
see
this
your
card.
I could see your deck with like Faithless Looting, Careful Study, Simple Card Filtration to put it in your bin, or some things you might value being in there, and then play 2 mana Tybalt to buy it back.
Yeah,
with it,
Tybalt.
and then get Tybalt double activation.
It's a
We're
really
just
good
doing
idea.
everything.
Nobody plays Tibbleton Commander, but I digress.
I'm gonna put that note to the side in the back of my head, and next time something happens and I make some cuts, I might do that actually, because that sounds like a really fun idea.
Add Tybalt. Do it.
Hey, 2 mana Tybalt has Grand
how
Prix
they-
cred, so nobody
Look how they
cares.
massacred my boy.
Not to mention the fact that when you're copying abilities, you can copy the abilities that give you emblems as well and just start being
Mhm.
a huge nuisance.
I
Big
actually
problem.
debated for a little while. I actually debated putting Karn Liberated in here as a win con, but I decided against it for now. So I don't know. That might happen. I don't know yet. This is just the version of the deck that I'm going to be currently playing and testing to try to get ideas from.
So you already mentioned Saheeli Ra and Feldar Guardian. At this
Yes.
point, is it worth it to maybe explore Kiki Jiki Mirror Breaker, Karmic Guide, Deceiver Exarch shenanigans as well in the deck?
So I like Kiki Chiki, Karma Guide, and Secret Exarch combos. The issue that I have with those is they just take up way too many card slots. and I'm already fighting for space in this deck as it is anyway. There's like 16, 17 planeswalkers in this deck. I'm already hurting on card space as it is already. Plus, I had to up the mana rock count because the number of mana rocks in here, they had good mana rocks, but I just had to put better mana rocks in the deck. Not to mention, I drastically downed the land count from what was it, 37, 38 lands, and I now run 30.
Okay. See, the dream here is we cut this crappy Kazul Tyrant of Cliffs from the precon.
I did cut him actually.
Make that a Kiki Jiki, and then copy your Jaya's Phoenix so you get it twice.
I actually
Very
cut
nice.
him. I cut Kazul for Mila Crafty Companion.
Oh yeah, the cool little
The-
fox dude that flips
the-
into Luca on the backside.
No, what you care about is that whenever they attack you or whenever they attack one of your planeswalkers, you put a little counter on all of them. And then you draw a card when they target them. That's what you care about. But we're not talking about Mila. We're gonna talk about the next new card, Onake Oathkeeper. 1 and a white for a 0/4. It's literally a freaking wall right now. It's great. Creatures can't attack planeswalkers you control unless their controller pays 1 colorless for each creature they control that's attacking a planeswalker you control. Pay 4 and double white, exile Onake Oathkeeper from your graveyard, return target planeswalker from graveyard to the battlefield. I like this. I think the first line of text is a really good, hey, I'm gonna go see prison for my planeswalkers.
Yeah.
This is more in line with like the Faithful Student and Careful Study crap I was just talking about.
I like the second line of text. It's an oh crap button for like if you lose one of the planeswalkers you need, you can just like pay the 6, dump him, put it back into play, and then start your loops all over again.
Which is actually quite important because, right, one of the things that, one of the problems with Commander is it is a singleton format. So if you're heavily basing your deck off of one card, then you need some kind of recursion for it. And the problem that you run with this deck, vice other Super Friends decks, is you're not in black. So that fancy little 7-drop that allows you to return every legendary permanent from your graveyard to the battlefield.
It would be the black-white one that's called Primeval's Glorious Rise.
That one.
It also doesn't let you run
Primeval's
Opposite
Glorious
Ad's Aid, which lets you put a permanent from graveyard back into play too. So yeah, that kind of hurts. All right, where were we? Next creature would be the Planebound Accomplice. Okay.
Yeah.
This is a piece, and when I say piece, this is a combo piece in this deck. So Planebound Accomplice, if for those of you who are unaware of, this is like 18 cents on TCG Player. This card is super cheap, really good upgrade for this deck that you can actively use with planeswalkers already in the deck. 200 red for a 1/3 human wizard. Pay a red. You may put a planeswalker card from your hand into the battlefield. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Now, in case you're wondering how we win with this card, so if you have Legacy, and I have to thank you, Carson, for bringing this one into my eyes. So if you have Planebound Accomplice in play with any of your ping planeswalkers, Saheeli, Rowan, Ralzeric, Commodore Guff, even, and you have them in play with Planebound Accomplice and a Cloudstone Curio, you sit there and you go, Torture Defiance, make 2 red. Put the Commodore Guff back in my hand from Cloudstone Curio activation. Pay a red in a Planebound Accomplice. Put Commodore Guff back into play. Put the Chandra back in my play. Minus Guff. Shoot everybody. Use the 1 floating red. Put it back into Planebound Accomplice. Play Chandra. Put Guff back into your hand. Make mana. Now you have a loop, and you can do this. So instead of having Guff, you could also do this with Ralzeric's minus, Rowan's plus, Saheeli's plus, and it doesn't have to be Torture Defiance. You can do it with Torture Defiance, Legacy of Fire, and if you have the artifacts in play that make red mana, you can also do this with Tezzeret, Teferi, or any of them like that, as long as you can actively copy the abilities. And there is an enchantment in here that does help us do that.
Yeah.
Not to mention some of the uncommon Chandras from M15.
Yes.
Right? Those also add enough red mana to activate this loop.
Yeah, I think the uncommon one adds double. I think the uncommon with 0s to put a loyalty on each of your red planeswalkers, and then the rare one I think makes double red as a plus.
Yeah, and you still have Torture Defiance too, which makes double red as well. Because
Yep.
Jerry, we kind of had a jank modern deck that ran a loop like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. We used Plainbound Accomplice with that card and oh boy, it's been a
Was
minute.
was it
It was
Awakened Inferno?
it wasn't just it was Awakened Inferno, and then there was the green Planeswalker that had a loop. The green Planeswalker lady who's a hunter. I cannot think of what.
Vivian.
Vivian. It was a Vivian plus Plainbound Accomplice. It worked like a pseudo birthing pod deck that allowed you to just wombo combo.
I know
Yeah.
you brought up Kiki Jiki earlier. There's actually a combo with Vivian on the hunt that uses Kiki Jiki as the win con.
See, like I
Yeah,
feel like
it's really
Kiki
good.
Jiki just kind of is a requirement to be in this deck.
Fun fact: Kiki Jiki's actually made his way back into the CDH meta. Sissy Weatherlight Captain decks, 5-color decks have gone back to Kiki Jiki win cons,
Nice.
and he's really popular in teamer decks too.
Right, Teamer Pirates. I've seen him just in there as
Yeah.
an alternate way to win.
Teamer Pirates, Teamer Polymorph, Teamer Food Chain. He's in a lot of decks.
Meanwhile, I'm just over here with my mono red goblins, just using Kiki Jiki just to flourish.
Oh,
Don't
he's just playing
worry.
Kiki Jiki because hey, it's a goblin.
Well, I mean, he also plays. I mean, he also plays Snoop lines in a Rorik Fire deck, but we're not going to talk about that right now. Going on to the last creature that we're going to discuss today is going to be the new one, Spark Shaper Visionary. 2 and a blue for a 0/5 human wizard. This guy can block Timna, and that's important. At the beginning of combat on your turn, choose any number of target planeswalkers you control. Until end of turn, they become 3/3 blue bird creatures with flying hexproof, and whenever this creature does combat damage to a player, scry 1. Here's the great part. They're still planeswalkers, and they're no longer planeswalkers, but you can still activate their loyalty abilities anyway. And they gain hexproof, which is huge in a deck like this. And the best part is it lasts until end of turn. You're just like, don't even do anything on your first main phase. You're just like, go to main phase, play land, go to combat. Okay, choose all my planeswalkers. Go to main phase 2, combo off.
Jeez.
Okay, so they can still activate their planeswalker abilities, but they're not
Yes.
planeswalkers anymore. Okay,
Correct.
So the rules part of me is like, okay, so they're not planeswalkers anymore, so they no longer work with like your Oath of Teferi
Well,
for
the
the
other thing,
turn.
you're right, but the other thing about that is that if you have, well, Oath of Fury won't work. It may work with Playmount Accomplice because if you have a Planeswalker in hand and you have a creature in hand, you can just play the creature, bounce it with the Cloudstone Curio, and then it's quits being the creature and it's a Planeswalker again when it's in your hand. And if you have
Okay.
the red mana, you can just recast it. Like, yeah, it's not going to have hexproof anymore, but it sets up to where you can still do your loops anyway.
Right. I was trying to read it, try to figure out like why would they do this?
Yeah.
Why would it not be a planeswalker? It's like, oh, it's a balancing issue. You don't want your planeswalker deck to be too damn good.
No, you don't want it to be too good, but I do like the fact that it gives them hexproof.
I would like to correct that. Cloudstone Curio does require that the thing that you bounce shares a permanent type with it.
Yes, that's why I also stated that you could play, if you have a creature in your hand, you can play the creature to bounce the planeswalker that's a creature.
Yeah.
And then you can do your loops with Cloudstone Curio with planeswalkers.
That's my fault. I didn't hear that. My bad.
You're good. It happens.
It's convoluted and it's weird because this is super like a super unintuitive card. I think that people need to be aware of. Like someone might look at this and be like, oh, I can make my planeswalkers attack, and they're going through the mind, the mental gymnastics of you usually attack first before you activate planeswalker effects, and then they're gonna have a bad day when their Oath of Teferi doesn't actually work anymore, stuff like that.
Correct. However, it still doesn't change the fact that if you go to your second main phase and they give them all hexproof and you sit there and you alt a Teferi Master a time, they can't kill it.
They can't do
because
nothing. No, they're not at
they
this
can't
point.
target it. Or even if you alt, like, I don't know, if you plus a Dakvay and then draw cards, do whatever with Saheeli. There's many other ways you can sit there and just protect your planeswalkers.
Yeah. Also, it's a 0/5. Why is this a 0/5? Why does it have such a big butt?
Because it can block everything.
Like I can. It's just big butt here.
Like
it was having a hard time fitting in its jeans this morning. It's okay.
the only other card I think that can block better than this thing right now for less mana is Nyx Fleece Ram.
It's gonna be like Nyx Fleece Ram or Fog Bank or two
I
that
love
come to mind.
But
I'll
Nyx
get
Fleece
you
Ram is
next
so
time,
good
Black
because
Sheep.
yeah,
Because
right.
it's a better card. I'll give you that.
So moving on, we're not really going to talk about the sorceries too much. It's your standard sorceries, a deck of Echo Vions is a recycle. Jessica's Will makes you a bunch of mana. Savine's Reclamation puts your planeswalkers back from graveyard to play. Not all of them, but certain ones. Or key creatures that you do need +2 board wipes in the form of Supreme and Wrath of God.
Yep. In a CEDH version of this deck, you might get more access to the legendary sorceries if that's your thing. I don't know.
Actually, so
I don't
like
know
the
if
deck
you'd want
actually
to.
Well, the deck actually comes standard with a Urza's Ruinous Blast, and I opted to actually cut the card
Oh,
mainly
fair.
because it exiles all non-legendary permanents, but that also includes your mana rocks.
Ah,
Yeah, so it's like a double-edged sword. Like you
like
can
why
do it,
is
you cannot do it. It's one of those. I don't really know right now. It might go back in, it might not go back in. It all depends on the meta. I know the meta where we play is slowly has been going into a more creature-heavy focused meta. So I may actually have to include a third board wipe in this deck, which is unfortunate. But hey, it happens.
I
It's
mean,
part of the game.
farewell, Cyclonic Rift, and Supreme Verdict.
I already run Cyclonic Rift. I mean, Supreme Verdict's in the deck, Wrath of God's in the deck, and I already have Cyclonic Rift. But moving on, briefly going to instance, the only one I really want to talk about is Dramatic Reversal because it goes infinite with Isochron Scepter.
We
Yeah,
got
pretty
there,
much.
guys.
Yeah, that's really it. Um, Skipping over to artifacts, there's a couple I wanted to talk about. Um, the first one I wanted to mention in this deck is Cloudstone Curio. I remember we briefly talked about this card, but I wanted to go ahead and just read it for those of you who are listening to us. Uh, 3 colorless. When a non-artifact permanent comes into play under your control, you may return another permanent you control that shares a permanent type with it to its owner's hand. So this actually also has the potentiality to go infinite with Dockside Extortionist as well. Because if you have Dockside Extortionist and another non-artifact creature in play, like, I don't know, how about Draneth Magistrate or Deep Glow Skate once you make infinite mana?
Make it Esper Sentinel. Make it cheap.
You can't do Esper Sentinel. Esper Sentinel's an artifact.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I already saw that. I'm like, crap. But you
So
can still
close.
but you can still do this with the other creatures in deck. Flux Channeler, Mila, Draneth Magistrate. If you make, I don't know, umpteen million treasures, you can sit there and just keep doing it with a Deep Glow Skate and infinitely activate your planeswalkers because that's a thing.
I like
I do like
this.
the card. Class and Curio, it's a little on the expensive side at roughly like, 43, $45, but it's still a pretty good, decent card. It does have a couple of reprints. I think it was just reprinted in the Lord of the Rings set as an alternate face card, but I don't know if it's more or less expensive.
Yeah,
Off the
here.
top
I'll
of
look it
my head.
up.
Yeah, let's see here.
I think it was Lorien Brooch, I think is what it was called.
No, it's Elisar, the Elfstone, and $20 for the full art version of that.
There you go. Your OG version that I have is double the price of the reprint.
Yep.
So
And then if you are the shiny, if you like the shinies, the masterpiece is currently going for 150.
Yeah, and that was the image I had up previously for those watching right now.
But the masterpiece looks so good with all the bronze and gold with that nice blue oval and smack dab in the middle of the art. I love it. I just love
Yep.
the contrast of it. The next card we're going to talk about is, and we might go in a little deep on this one, Ichor Moon Gauntlet. 2 and a blue for an artifact. Planeswalkers you control have 0 proliferate and -12. Tag an extra turn after this one. When you cast a non-creature spell, choose a counter on target permanent. Put a additional counter of that kind on that permanent. This card is nutty in this deck. This is a prime example of this deck lets you play bad cards. Because this card, when it first came out, everybody's ranting about this. It was a $30 card, $40 card, and then 2 months later, just plummets in price. But now in this deck, this card has the potential to go nuts. If you resolve this and you have 5 planeswalkers in play, that's a lot of proliferating.
Yeah,
That's
Tink, tink, tink.
Yeah, I will say the standard version is sitting at about $20 a piece at the moment, it looks like. From what I can see, the pre-release foil though is sitting at 14, which is odd
Yeah.
that this one's sitting at 20 right
Yeah,
now.
right.
Ichor Moon Gauntlet also allows you to, if you're interested in War of the Spark uncommon walkers with only negative abilities. So this allows
Yeah.
you to do something with those. Like if you have like a Narset Parter Veils at 1 loyalty, she's not doing anything besides putting a really cool tax effect on the board, but now she's proliferating and getting back up there.
She's actually in this deck. She comes in the deck already.
Hang on,
What?
Yes.
I think MTG Goldfish actually might be messing up on the price because I see Tabletop Card Kingdom for $7.
I see it on TCG for like $3 or $4.
Yeah, so yeah, I don't know what's going on with the price here or MTG Goldfish, so disregard me. Anyway,
Narset Parter Veils is in this? That's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
Narset Parter Veils come standard in the deck already.
I would
Yeesh.
also like to point out with Ichor Moon Gauntlet, if you like to proliferate, how would you like to proliferate twice? There is a creature called Tekathal Inquiry Dominus.
Yes, the blue Dominus from the Phyrexia set, the last Phyrexian set. But if you really like to proliferate, again, there's a Chain Veil in this deck too. So
yeah,
if you have an Ichor Moon and a Chain Veil, that gets out of hand real quickly.
yeah, and that Tekathal is only a $4 card too. So again, a
Yeah.
nice little cheap upgrade.
So speaking of the Chain Veil, that's the next card we're going to discuss is the Chain Veil. I like this card. I actually, for the longest time, played a Chain Veil to Fury. Some of you may be familiar with that deck. Some of you may not. It's a mono blue deck where the win con is you make pseudo infinite planeswalker activations with the Chain Veil. It's pretty interesting. But the Chain Veil itself, I'm going to go ahead and read the card for you real quick, is 4 colorless for a legendary artifact. At the beginning of your end step, if you didn't activate the loyalty ability of a planeswalker this turn, you lose 2 life. We're never going to have that happen, like ever. 4 mana, tap. For each planeswalker you control, you may activate one of its loyalty abilities once this turn, as though none of its loyalty abilities have been activated this turn. Now, there's a really interesting ruling with this card. And this card actually changes the structure of the turn to an extent. So what will happen is if you activate the Chain Veil and you play a Planeswalker after you have activated the Chain Veil, that Planeswalker still gets to activate its own ability and then activate the Planeswalker ability again because of the Chain Veil. The Chain Veil actually overrides the 1 Planeswalker activation per turn clause of loyalty abilities. And that's actually how the Chain Veil Teferi deck would work. So you would if you activate Chain Veil 5 times and then the Planeswalker goes away, the Planeswalker comes back, you can activate that Planeswalker the 1 plus the number of times you've activated the Chain Veil that turn.
Okay, so it's like its own built-in KCI loop.
Kind of. So if you have like Tezzeret, or if you have one of these other planeswalkers in here, and you've activated the Chain Veil a bunch of times, and you blink it to get a new instance of the planeswalker, you're still going to get all of those previous activations on top of that.
What?
Yeah, so if y'all are interested, feel free on the Gatherer, look up the Chain Veil. It's the second ruling, right? Because the last ability modifies the rules of the game, it affects not only planeswalkers you control when it resolves, but also planeswalkers that come under your control later that turn.
Oh my
So if you've
goodness.
activated the Chain Veil 3 times, right, and then you play a nice 8-drop Ugin, you can not only get his original activation for playing, but you also can plus or minus him 3 additional times because you've
Yes.
activated the Chain Veil 3 times.
The card
Yeah.
itself is an activated ability that changes the rule of the game, not the text on a card.
Correct.
Wow. And then if you happen to blink this Ugin or whatever planeswalker,
You
it can.
get the initial activation plus 3 more activations.
Oh
You
my
get the initial
goodness.
activation, plus you get 1 additional activation for each time you have activated the Chain Veil. And I have purposely made the Planeswalker spread in this deck to try to activate this card as many times as possible. So I have Ralzeric in here that untaps artifacts, any permanents. I have Teferi's Social Sunset that'll untap a land and untap an artifact or a creature, and then I have Tezzeret the Seeker that untaps 2 artifacts. So if you have 2 of those planeswalkers in place, so if you have Tezzeret with Ralzeric or Tezzeret with Teferi, you can sit here and say, Tezzeret, untap Chainveil, untap my Grim Monolith, and then have Ralzeric untap my Mana Crypt, float mana, activate Chainveil. I can activate them again, untap those 3 cards, do it again, untap those 3, do it again, untap those 3, do it again. And every time you activate this, you can sit there and go, I have Rowan in play. Plus Rowan, shoot you for 1. Plus Rowan, shoot you for 1. Plus Rowan, shoot you for 1. Or I have a Saheeli, plus shoot everybody for 1. Plus shoot everybody for 1. Plus shoot everybody for 1. Repeatedly, and it just gets a little nutty. The only like real downside to this combo is, yes, I understand it takes a lot of cards, but this is a sorcery speed combo. This has to be done at sorcery speed. That's really the only real like issue in the deck itself. But this is still a really good way to finish out of games with this combo. Plus, you don't have to spend the money on a chain build. It's already in the deck.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
already there.
being a sorcery speed combo in Jeskai is not really a big deal. You do
Not
you
really.
get access to Fairy Time Raveler. You could have access to I'm trying to think here. Myriad of effects that blue and white have that say you play stuff on your turn, not my own turn.
Pretty much.
So also added a little extra convoluted in nature. Uh, the emblem for Teferi Temporal Archmage
Yeah.
allows you to activate Planeswalker abilities at instant speed.
Oh, so yeah, then it is an instant speed combo at that point.
Yes.
But the problem with that is getting Teferi Temporal Archmage to 10 to do that.
And he's a
Without
6-drop.
And at that
without the
point, most
abilities
people are just
of
at that point most people are just scooping it up anyways.
Yeah.
yeah. And the downside that I see to this deck versus other Super Friends decks is that this deck forces you to play without cards like Doubling Season or Vorinclex, Voracious Predator, which would double the Planeswalker counters upon entry, allowing
Yes.
you to ultimate them as soon as they come out.
But you see that as a negative. I see that as a positive because honestly, that's not interesting to me. Like, cool, Doubling Season did the thing that it always has done for the past
Yes.
20 freaking years since the card was printed.
Mhm.
Like, I cool, I guess.
So I see it negative because that's one of the things that I do inside my Planeswalker deck.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And if
So-
you're playing 5-color walkers, you should play it. Please don't get me wrong. I just like that this deck has another option and another angle to go at it, where it's more dedicated to being this blue, white, red, twinsy planeswalkery deck.
Yeah, and an option that's not $75 for the non-foil.
Right. And an option that's already included in the deck too.
Yeah.
So I think we're gonna talk about one more card, and then we'll just talk about like the mana base and whatever. So the last card we're gonna talk about in this deck is a card I'm actually very fond of in this deck, and I'm gonna be running this. And I think this card might get slept on when you first initially start playing this deck. And the card is called Rowan's Talent. It is 2 colorless, 2 red for enchantment aura, enchant planeswalker. Enchanted Planeswalker has +1 up to 1 target creature gains +2/+0 and gains first strike and trample until end of turn. That's not why we're playing this. We are playing this for the second line of text, which is whenever you activate a loyalty ability of Enchanted Planeswalker, you copy the ability and you may choose new targets for the copy. If you have a Tezzeret the Seeker in play and a Rowan's Talent, you immediately go infinite with the Chainmail. You're untapping 4 permanents by plussing him only once. That is obscenely good. Not to mention that even if you put it on Teferi Who Slows the Sunset, you're going to +1, but then you're going to untap 2 artifacts, 2 lands, and 2 creatures. If you untap the right 2, you untap the Chain Veil, a Mana Crypt, and 2 lands, you're still getting enough mana to repeatedly activate the Chain Veil over and over and over and over again.
Yep.
I think like overall, as the deck itself. I think one of the really one of the only like downsides to this deck that I have is the mana curve. The curve is a little rough. It's a little high on the 4 drops and 5 drops, but the average CMC is still 2.04. It's still a low average CMC, and there's plenty of mana sources in this deck to get where you want to go.
And
Yeah.
there's plenty of cheese you could do. If you really are scared of mana, you
Yeah.
can do early mana tricks with Honor Worn Shaku, which is in the precon.
Which is really good because
Yep.
Planeswalkers don't care if they're tapped. You can still activate them.
Yep. And if you really want to go a little deeper with it, a Magda plus Heal from Reality, that's infinite colorless mana. You can do what you need to do.
Pretty much.
Remember the good old days when a permanent was tapped, you couldn't activate anything it had.
Yeah, that's
Remember
why
when-
that's why
remember-
Kill Switch was a card.
Remember when Honor Worn Shaku was a meme? Now it's actually
Yeah.
like, ah, crap.
Now it's again, this is a deck that lets you play bad cards. Honor Worn Shaku outside of a deck like this is a bad card. But in this deck,
In this deck, it's a Dark Ritual every turn.
kind of pretty much. Real quick, just run through the land base. Typical Jeskai land base, Command Tower, City of Brass. A couple of notions in here. This did come with the precon deck itself actually came with some planeswalker specific lands, mainly Forge of Heroes, Interplanar Beacon, and Karn's Bastion. I left all 3 of them in there. I might cut the Forge of Heroes, but the Interplanar Beacon lets you filter a land into mana you need to cast the Planeswalker, and then Karn's Bastion is just pay for tap proliferate.
Another
really-
land that's similar to Interplanar Beacon actually came out in the latest Lord of the Rings set, Great Hall of the Citadel. Right, that
Another good
also allows you to filter 1 mana into 2 mana of any combination of colors, but you can only cast legendary spells.
That's still
So-
pretty good. That's still pretty decent in itself anyway. Because I think I run like I run 2 different legendary creatures in this deck, so that might help out in that aspect. But other than that, I don't think it's really going to do too much. But it is an idea, and I appreciate that.
Now, another thing too that we got out of the Lord of the Rings set for this is we did get Delighted Halfling. So if you're in a counterspell heavy, like in a pod with a blue player, they're probably packing a lot of counterspells. Delighted Halfling is going to make that legendary spell, that Planeswalker of yours, uncounterable.
If you can run green.
Yep. Yeah. And granted, that would be adding green, but that would be another option if you were exploring away from the Jeskai colors.
That would actually be really good in that actually could be a good add to put into Carson's Sliver deck, but that's entirely up to the player itself.
Yep. Another angle you could hit with this deck is using cards like I'm trying to think here, Fires of Invention plus Savor the Moment. Being that it doesn't matter if your lands or your planeswalkers untap, you could still just reactivate all of them on your next extra turn.
Yep.
Stuff like that. Just like, oh, that's interesting. We could do that.
Another output that you can play. This boils down to my Timmy aspect. I know you don't like too many 5 drops in here, but let's go back to the newest Phyrexia set. All will be 1. You're adding counters onto your planeswalkers. That's extra damage that you're doing just for sitting there.
Yeah, the red enchantment.
Yeah.
If you're playing this many 4 and 5 drops, maybe we should just be playing Fires of Invention.
Right. Well, I mean, one of the big 5 drops in this deck that actually comes also standard in the precon is Oath to Teferi, and that's still another really good card to have in a deck like this, which means, hey, I don't have to pay the money for this one.
What? You mean activating planeswalkers twice in a turn is really good?
But I was actually pleasantly surprised by some of the key cards that were already in this precon, mainly Oath to Teferi and a Chain Veil, and I'm just like, you already gave me what I want in this deck that I don't have to rip out of another deck anyway. So kudos to you. Again, your mana bases, they kind of suck.
Isn't there a planeswalker that gives creatures -1/-0 on a plus?
There's a couple of them that do it. I believe there is
There it is. It's in the precon. Jace, Architect of Thought.
That's what I thought.
actually-
Good old Architect of Victory.
I'm like-
I actually ripped every Jace out of this deck.
I'm like, let's go a little controlling. Let's Jace minus. Let's do that plus a bunch of times and just say no one's gonna hurt anyone. We're
Well,
gonna
the
sit
problem
here.
well the problem is that you can do that to one creature or two creatures, but once they start slamming 3, 4, and 5 creatures, there's really not a lot you're going to be able to do with that.
Yeah.
And like,
Well, it's Jace Architect isn't target. It's all.
fair enough. But again, I'm at this stage of my Magic history where um, Jace has had some really good printings, and Jace has had some really bad printings. And the printings that were already in the deck were not that great for what I wanted the deck to do.
Right. As we discussed before, winning the game.
Yeah,
Yes.
winning the game is what I intended to try to do with this deck as fast as possible.
So,
Also,
oh,
a
go
neat
ahead.
little creature, another neat little creature that, if you're interested in, making your planeswalkers ult faster, would be Lae'zel Vlaakith's Champion, right? It makes it so that whenever you add a counter onto a creature or a planeswalker you control, or even on yourself, you put that many +1 of those kinds on the player instead.
Spell the name for me, please.
LAE''ZEL, comma VLAAKITH''S Champion.
Isn't it? That's not the blue Dominus, is it?
No. This was a white 3-drop creature that came out of
Oh,
the D and D set.
the
Yeah.
white D&D creature. I gotcha. Okay, yeah. I actually thought about her for a good solid amount of time, like a good solid day or two. I actually really thought about having her in this deck. But I ended up opting for Dranith and Esper Sentinel instead, honestly. Just as something to like kind of slow everybody down just a little bit, because this is not going to be exactly the fastest deck at the table, but it definitely might be the most explosive
Yeah.
at the table.
Like when it does its thing, it's doing it.
Yeah, when it does this thing, it's unfriendly and it'll do it very well.
Yep.
And if
Now,
you want to be unfriendly with that Dranith, just throw a knowledge pool in the deck.
Yeah, right. You want to be
Police.
that guy. Want to be that guy, but whatever. It's fine.
now, one question I do have, right? So you're talking about using Mana Vault here for like your combo, right? Or
Yeah.
Mana Crypt, Mana Vault. But
Mana Vault, Crypt, Grim Monolith, any of the mana positive rocks.
yeah, the downfall to those though is the price tag.
Yes, which is unfortunate.
Yep. So are there any other artifacts out there that they're not mana positive in that, Mana Crypt, it's 0 mana, I get to add 2. Are there other avenues I can go to or other mana rocks I can look at to kind of make it a little bit cheaper?
Yes, absolutely. Other options you could run are Soul Ring, which is already in the deck. Thran Dynamo is a pretty decent one. It's 4 colorless to make 3 colorless. Another one you can also run is Basalt Monolith. It's a 3-drop, but you pay 3 into it, or you make 3 colorless with it, and then you can put 3 into it to untap it.
Yeah. But
You're
again, we're going to
also-
be cheating the untapping with Tezzeret.
You're
Tezzeret,
also in red, so you get access to things like, Rite of Flame, Simian Spirit Guide, Seething Song to get out fast walkers that generate mana on their own.
yes. Again, I am. This is actually just my first initial list for this deck, and I will be adjusting accordingly when the deck comes out and I start actively playing it more.
Okay.
Um,
Well,
little fun side tidbit. I did put the One Ring in here, and I think this card is a house.
oh
In
no.
so many decks.
100%. So I put the One Ring in my Kozilek the Great Distortion deck, and having the One Ring with artifacts like Voltaic Key, or Voltaic Key, Mana Vault Key, and just being able to say, oh, okay, turn 1 I'm going to draw 3 cards. Turn 2 I'm going to draw 6 cards.
Being able to untap it with a Tezzeret, a Ralzeric, or a Teferi is really good too.
Yeah, like
this card is. This is in. Is it Pirates? It's in Mizzix, Red Blue Storm. It's in Joria Storm lists.
I put it
Like-
in Orvar so I could
Yeah.
draw my whole deck and play Pulsing Oracle.
Yeah, why
the
not?
One Ring is gonna be in it's gonna be everywhere. It's
Yep.
already seen in so many decks in just regular CDH and in CDH in itself. It's such a ridiculously good card, and at 4 mana, it's pretty decently mana priced for what it does.
Yep. And in Modern, And in Legacy.
Yep.
In Vintage, it will get restricted in Vintage within the year. Calling that right now.
Probably.
Getting that done. Every legal format you could play it in, it's in.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for us. This was a bit of a longer episode, but when it comes to Commander, especially with new decks and that, there's so much that you can talk about, so many different ways that you can improve it. Cash Carson, thank you very much for joining us for this. We look forward to seeing y'all next week when we talk about the last two decks, Eldrazi Unbound and the
Enduring Enchantments.
Yeah, Enduring Enchantments. And then continue to look out for more Commander content from us here at the Snapcast as we continue to just dive deeper into this format. If you have any questions about Commander or ways that you can improve your deck, feel free to shoot us a message. We're on all the social medias, and we'll be sure to get back to you as soon as possible. But again, thank you guys very much for joining us. We look forward to having you on some more. And that's going to do it for us tonight. Y'all have a fantastic evening.
Oh, snap.